Cleveland Browns, I'm Jeff Slauson. What a week we had planned until Friday when an absolute bombshell dropped. ODOT announcing that they are declining the permit that was applied for by Haslam Sports Group due to how high the stadium is, saying it would impact air traffic. This is massive. According to the ODOT decision, they say that it is about 50 feet too tall, it, of course, being the Browns dome. Now, here's the thing. The Browns applied for this permit through the FAA, as is law. They applied for it through the FAA. Then the FAA sends that same permit to ODOT. The FAA has every right to approve it. Now, the FAA acknowledged that basically it is too tall, but they said it should be fine given air traffic conditions. Then it was sent to ODOT. ODOT took their time trying to figure out exactly how they could perceive it, and on August 1st, they notified Haslam Sports Group that, according to them, this is not how it should work, and that either they have to decrease the height by about 50 feet or move the stadium further away from federal airspace. So now it's really is it an FAA thing or is it an ODOT thing? And obviously, it's pretty confusing. It took us a while to kind of get a grasp of all of this. So going to try and break this down as easy as possible. So let's head over to the big board. So again, ODOT denied the permit. The FAA said that it was okay. 58 feet too tall is what ODOT determined it was. Now, the FAA, again, they said that it was 58 feet too tall, but Haslams were able to kind of get around that by doing a study to determine that it wouldn't have any impact and saying they would put lights on the roof so planes could see it from a far time away. Now, it is 58 feet from the highest point, not just 58 feet in general. In total, it cannot exceed 150 feet or 163 feet from where they are. Basically, there's a difference in elevation from 150 feet from the airport or 163 feet from where the stadium would be built. So those are the height restrictions that they have to work with. Right now, they are clearly over that. It's more than 200 feet tall. So it would have to be decreased in some way. Or they could move from their spot. In the letter that was sent to the Haslams, it was not specified where, like how far they actually would have to move for it. But I think it's still important to kind of walk our way through this. This is the map that was released from ODOT to the Haslams, okay? So that's Cleveland Hopkins Airport on this side. Let's get the pen going here so we can really show you exactly what we're talking about. Great, okay. So that right here is Cleveland Hopkins International Airport, right? The stadium's about in like this-ish area. There is room to move the stadium. They could move it a little bit further to the south. Now, it wouldn't actually be that point. It would be within still that circle. But it's still not that large of a difference, and it's still within that large blue circle that you see right there. So it does seem that if they were to move it, it wouldn't be far enough. According to ODOT as well, if they were to move it, they'd have to apply for the same permits that they're applying for right now. So there's no certainty that it would even be accepted, again, if it was in that area. So still a lot of unknowns. According to the Haslams, they want a conversation. Before they officially appeal it, they have 30 days to appeal from August 1st. They want a conversation with ODOT basically to say, here's where we stand, here's where the FAA stands, why are you not in our area, and why are you not agreeing with us on that? Now, we do not know if ODOT has agreed to a meeting with them or not. What we do know is this really could harm the actual timeline for the stadium. This is something that I talked about with our aviation legal expert. Where are we in this, and why are there different decisions from the FAA and from ODOT? He answered our questions.
The state of Ohio Department of Transportation's Aviation Division interpreting the Part 77 regulations differently than the Federal Aviation Administration. There are situations where objects do penetrate protected airspace by some limited height, but then those obstructions have to be properly marked and lit. You probably have seen on antennas or cell towers, either flashing beacons, either white or red. Those are called navigational lights, and they are so lit so that aircraft that are flying in the area can see and observe obstructions that may affect safe operation of the airplane. And so the FAA's interpretation appears to be that even though there will be some degree of penetration of protected airspace, so long as the objects, in this case, portions of the stadium, are properly marked and lit, that they're going to grant permission for the structure to be built. The Department of Transportation Ohio sees it a little differently. So what is going to likely happen here is there's going to be litigation, and how long that is going to play out is anyone's guess. You know, it'll play out in the administrative agencies, and then it'll probably play out in federal courts is what I would expect. And so it could be some time before this is all sorted out.
Who has the jurisdiction? Does the FAA have the jurisdiction, or does ODOT have the jurisdiction here?
Well, it's a very good question. The FAA's rules and regulations, in my opinion, will preempt any state regulations, because the state regulations are really an interpretation of what federal law is. Federal Aviation Administration regulates the airspace at all of the airports and even in the en route airspace between airports in the United States. And so it is my expectation that the FAA's position on this will ultimately be the rule of law insofar as what the HASLMs can and cannot do. And, you know, what's interesting, people probably have asked, why not just build a stadium with a dome where the current Brown Stadium is? Well, you have an airport there. You have Burke Lakefront Airport. And the stadium sits very close to the far west end of the two runways that are operated at Burke Lakefront Airport. And so, given what is necessary to have a dome and the height of the dome, it would be a clear violation of protected airspace. And so I think the only way to be able to put a dome stadium up near where Burke Lakefront Airport is would be to shut down the airport. I don't see that happening quite so fast.
That you bring up an interesting point, I guess, with how important that airspace actually is. I mean, how important is 50 feet when it comes to traffic control and air traffic protection? 50 feet, I think to many people, it doesn't seem that much. I mean, it's 5 stories, so it's not insignificant, but I mean, how important is that variance for pilots or for people that are in aviation?
It means a lot when you have an aircraft in trouble, when you have an aircraft that loses an engine or there's some other failure on the aircraft that, you know, that inhibits its ability to climb safely or to descend safely to the airport. You know, think of it this way. Part 77 ensures that nothing sticks up into the protected bubble of airspace where aircraft need to operate safely. It creates a process for evaluating and mitigating potential hazards before they become a danger. And so, you know, I've been involved in a number of cases where aircraft have attempted to land at an airport. They cannot stop the airplane. And so the pilots decide to abort the landing and take back off again. And unfortunately, they lose a part of the airplane, like a wing, because it strikes an object such as a tower, whether it's a high voltage transmission tower or an antenna that is in a place where it should never have been. Or at the very least, if it penetrated the airspace by a small margin, should have been properly marked and lit. So this is really first and foremost for the safety of flight.
We did reach out to ODOT for a statement on this, and they did inform us that they sent the HASLMs a letter on August 1st notifying them of ODOT's decision to deny the permit application for the stadium. They go on to say, although the structure was given clearance from the FAA, ODOT deferred to the Cleveland Airport System's determination that the structure would impact the airspace of the Cleveland Hopkins International Airport. The deferral to local airport authorities is standard for all development proposals considered by ODOT that are over height but received clearance from the FAA. The statement goes on to say there are still options to keep the project moving forward that include, but are not limited to, revising the plans to lower the structure, an administrative appeal under Chapter 119 of the ORC, or the Cleveland Airport System could change its position and accept the current plans. ODOT will be meeting with Clyde & Co., that's the law firm representing the HASLMs, to discuss the next steps. Now, I talked about this briefly, but I think it's a really important distinction to note here. The timeline is so important for the new stadium. The HASLMs, the Browns, Brook Park, They want to start moving dirt in a couple of months. They want to start construction in 2026. Now, as you heard from our expert, there's a belief that this would go to litigation. If that's the case, this can really get drawn out. Just think about this. If the Browns start construction in 2026, they want it to be ready to go by the spring of 2029. That's 3 years. And while that seems like a lot, in the grand scheme, it really isn't. Currently, the Buffalo Bills are building their stadium in Orchard Park, New York. They've been at it for a few years. It's really going up to the wire to be open for next season. So if there's litigation with this, so the difference between the FAA and with ODOT, we already know there's litigation with whether or not the Browns can use unclaimed funds for the stadium and litigation over whether or not they're actually able to move in general. All of this is adding up, and there is a large chance that the timeline has to be expedited really closely in order for the Browns to be able to have their first game by 2029. And coming up after the break, we hear from Kyle